Thank you. I write historical fiction. It's all set in southeastern Ohio except one, which I set in Sarasota, Florida. And I've decided to read from my most recent book, which is the fourth in the Black Diamond series. This is called What Immortal Hand? The Black Diamond Heresy. And to give you just a little bit of a setup, Penelope Sutton is just recently engaged to Jerry McQuaid. But she has a flirtation going with a black miner who's also a waiter. And neither of them are imagining what's happening to them, because in 1915, you just wouldn't do that. It's really fun though. Was that all there was to it? Was she such a little sap that a shower of affection and a hint of passion could make her throw caution to the winds? He was so handsome, his blue-gray eyes sparkling with love for her, his sandy blonde hair kissed by the sun, his arms tanned and muscular. It was no wonder she was reduced to mush. Any red-blooded woman would be. He smelled of bay rum, and that was the final straw when he moved in to kiss her. What was that about bay rum but the devil's brew, slapping her senseless? Had she actually said yes? Funny, she didn't remember saying anything, but somehow she must have, because she's got a sparkler on her ring finger. For by golly, there it was. Maybe it was the wine. She should never drink wine. She lifted her hand to examine the ring again, the halo of tiny diamonds creating a perfect frame for the single stone cushion cut in the center. It was truly exquisite, prettier than any ring she'd ever seen. Beautiful ring, beautiful man. Oh, whatever was she going to do? She was engaged, for heaven's sakes. Jerry McQuaid, Mrs. Jerry McQuaid. Mrs. Penelope McQuaid, Penny McQuaid. Well, it sounded all right. It had a nice ring to it. He was funny and clever, a good conversationalist. He was a hard worker, she knew that. He seemed to think he would make a partner soon. Wait, Penelope, how did this become an examination of Fred Hunt, her boss? She was contemplating this fine kettle of fish she had gotten herself into, and off her mind went on an excursion. Was it because she was trying to avoid the other issue she wasn't thinking about? No, not thinking about at all. So let's weigh this intelligently. Jerry. She really loved his mother and sisters. They seemed to really love her. And she had no doubt Jerry loved her. He said he did, over and over. He'd bought her an engagement ring, for heaven's sakes. Didn't that mean he loved her? Of course it did. Jerry's no fool. Only a fool would buy an engagement ring for someone he didn't love, so okay, she'd be marrying a man who loved her, a handsome, hard-working man, and she would slide very comfortably into a family. That would feel so good, and it would be good for Pris and Patsy, her sisters. They already liked Jerry. He was very kind to them, and sometimes brought them little gifts. She could keep her job with Mr. Charney, couldn't she? Oh my, they hadn't discussed that. Mr. Charney needed her. Mark, Maddie, and Mary Alice needed her. She couldn't leave them. How could she have accepted a proposal without finding out if she could keep her job? Well, she'd just have to lay down the law with Jerry about that. She couldn't imagine him telling her she couldn't keep the job. She didn't like the idea of being told she could or couldn't do something by a man, by any man, even a handsome one like Jerry McQuaid. How could she have overlooked such a vital issue before saying yes? Well, that was the first conversation she and Jerry would have to have. Maybe at dinner tomorrow night. It was a dilemma, though. Could they stay at Charney's if she wasn't there, the girls? Maybe Priscilla could take over as a live-in governess while she, Penny, came to work every day. Odd. Now that was yet another pickle. Well, he just had to be okay with it because she was a package deal. No question. She had questions to ask her betrothed. Betrothed? What a stuffy sounding word that was. Fiancé sounds better. Questions she would have to ask her fiancé. Penelope shivered. That word should have elicited something besides a shiver. A shred of doubt crossed her mind. Probably not the last one she would experience. In fact, shredded described her mind at the moment. Yes, she'd have to talk to Daniel. A lightning bolt hit her. Daniel. She'd thought Daniel, not Jerry. "Oh, Penelope, you're in trouble, serious trouble." Penelope lay down on her bed, turning her face to the wall, and let the tears come. Thank you.
I've been instructed to tell you that I have a lifelong involvement with dance, from wishing I could have dance lessons as a child, to dancing in college, to finding myself in the French-speaking world, and dance being the language that I could manage for when I was there. And then coming back to the States and being in Athens, where I've encountered many dancers and dances. Some of the titles of the poems in this book came from phrases I was handed in the middle of a dance at Ohio University. One of the dancers scribbled a bunch of phrases on a piece of paper, handed them to a random audience member. I was the lucky one because I chose those. I took them to be assignments for poems. And one of those phrases was, "Lulu crawls away." Lulu crawls away, and someone says, "Home, a place of permanence." But Lulu doesn't look back, and no one comes after her. What is permanence in this shuddering world? Heraclitus was right. The river keeps moving. Someone leaps over her, another steps past, and Lulu crawls away into the shadows. And this next poem, if I can find these little cute little post-it things, can be hard to feel, actually. So this one is called Immigrant Ghosts. I went to a dance performance where the dancers were in a bank wearing raincoats and proceeded across the stage very slowly. And I'm picturing them with umbrellas that they gestured with, but I'm not actually sure at this point whether that was the real dance or only the dance I imagined. And actually this poem was performed in French and English in Switzerland a couple of months ago actually. Immigrant ghosts walking toward us with their suitcases and black umbrellas, holding out their hands to feel the weather. Are they a dream we had once? They miss the rain, filling their palms, running down their faces. They miss its cool touch on their cheeks. How many times have they stopped, then moved on, opening and closing their umbrellas, reaching out their hands and pulling them back again, empty. They have no words for how far they've come or how lost they feel, how weary here on the railway platform where trains, though heard, white noise in the distance and felt, shuddering the earth, never reach the station. And this last one is a picture of a dance studio that I spent a lot of time with in Switzerland in a building that no longer exists because that whole area which was factories and storehouses and whatnot, was urban renewed. I think there are nightclubs and high-end stereo shops there now. There would be sometimes at sunset a moment when the sun paused, poised on the edge of warehouse roofs, blackened by its gold, and long, unbroken rays would enter the window, strike the space, and blur whole sections of the mirror, light, a white wall, a bronze Buddha, lift the music into darkness and the dancers to final invisibility. Thank you.
The protagonist is Susan, and she has just been asked by the Dean of Fine Arts to go to Mexico and find his wife. And the reason this is so important is because the Dean has received a nude portrait of his wife in the mail, postmarked Mexico. Now, there was this one portrait that was pretty neat, but it made him mad. He didn't want to see his wife nude, and he wondered who painted the portrait. But suddenly, something else happens. And I call this section of the novel the second portrait. When the dean came into my studio, I was ready to tell him no, until I saw the cardboard tube he was clutching to his chest. "Why do you torment yourself?" I sounded stern. "I've seen the portrait. You don't have to show it to me again. Throw it away, burn it, something." The dean whispered, "Can you go, Susan? Can you go?" Each time he said it, his plea grew in urgency. Ambivalent Susan said, "I don't know. I just don't know." Then, with difficulty, the dean brought a rolled up mass of slippery material from the tube he was carrying. This was not the cream-colored canvas from earlier in the week. This was something else. "Now tell me I have nothing to worry about." Scott spread the new painting over my high chair and floor. Black satin, a nude on black satin. No portrait had ever been so tasteless. No painting as garishly gaudy. I gasped. Angelina's hair, both on her head and in the pubic area, was an unbelievable bright yellow. The red hat lying beside her sported flowers not found in nature, shiny flowers, dirty plastic flowers. Angelina held one over her protruding belly. Her misshapen breasts were huge, with dark purple nipples. Her fat legs grew tough like patches of black hair. Her previous half smile was now a leer. This painter had used an ugly stick with great abandon. I wondered if I should tell Scott that this was not Angelina at all, rather a slut twin sister. But no, the resemblance was still there, in spite of the liberties the artist had taken. Scott cried, "This bastard has turned her into a whore." "Shouldn't you call the police?" I remembered the handsome colonial uniforms of the mounted law enforcers. They didn't seem real, but rather part of the stage set that was San Miguel. Surely there were other policemen, less showy, more serious. "Go down there, Susan, as soon as you can. Find her. And as soon as this damn anniversary celebration is over, I'll be there. I will." The dean lifted the black satin painting up from my desk and chair and carried it down the hallway to the big cardboard waste container. There he folded it, so only the black underside was visible, and dropped this particular Angelina into the drum.
I'm going to be reading from my novel Supervision, which HarperCollins published last month. And so this is the first time I've actually read from the real Smells Like a Book is an actual book. That's exciting. All you need to know about this section I'm going to read is that the main character got in big trouble and was sent to live with her grandmother. And so far, the only people who have spoken to her are two teenagers who you're going to see in this section. This is Supervision. Tom held my hand most of the way. His touch felt light and tenuous, like I was trying to hold on to a leaf. We walked behind the house, by the pond. I tried not to look at it as we passed. It was only an ugly pond. Stories were just stories. Clara led us back of the barn, then stopped. "We're here," she said. "What's here?" I asked. Tom dropped my hand. A home base of sorts, at least for Clara. We stood in the grass by the barn, before an oak tree with big exposed roots. At the base of the trunk rested a pile of old bricks with a hole in the middle, like a pizza oven. Protruding from the top of the brick pile was a chimney. "It's a kiln," Tom said. "Not used anymore, if it ever was. It's just the secret entrance to a tunnel." "A what?" I said. "That's what we want to show you. It's one of Clara's favorite places. It's perfectly safe. he said when I looked at him. Come on, Clara will go first. Clara hiked her skirt with one hand and bent under the archway of bricks into the mouth of the kiln. She gave a trilling whistle like a bird. Then she was gone. Whoa, I said. It's just a tunnel, Ez. I don't do so great with tunnels. It's just a way in, and there are steps in there, a ladder. You don't even have to jump. Come on, I'll help you. What had he called me? Ez. No one had ever called me that before. Tom took my hand and led me into the kiln. At first, all I saw was blackness. Then I could make out some kind of passageway a few feet below. Something protruded from the wall, a ladder made of bricks. I clutched Tom's hand and with my other reached blindly. My fingers found a brick. I let go of Tom and called, I've got it. Finally, Clara muttered below me. I climbed down the ladder, Tom following close behind. When I leapt from the last step, I landed on packed earth and moved over for Tom, who jumped down beside me. How far down are we? I asked. 6 feet, Tom said. I thought of the barn 6 feet above us, the fields, the pond. This way, Tom said. He was holding my hand again. We moved forward, crouching for a few dim steps. Then my eyes adjusted. The tunnel opened and I could stand up straight. The passageway extended for as long as I could see, wide enough for Tom, Clara, and me to stand abreast. What is this place? I asked. My voice was a whisper, but it bounced off the walls. What it was, Tom said, was part of the Underground Railroad. Really? I thought that was just an expression, not actual tunnels. There were some tunnels. Is it safe? How long does it go on? All the way to your grandmother's house. My grandmother's house was a stop on the Underground Railroad. It made sense. The house was old enough and big and strange enough. I touched the smooth brick walls of the tunnel with my hand. The air felt cold and thin. The subway tunnel came back to me then. The darkness, the door, the pain in my forehead when I had struck the wall. I pressed on my temples. Wait, I said. You said this is home, a home base? You live here? I thought of Tom's clothes, how raggedy they were, how he had worn the same outfit. Are you runaways? My eyes had adjusted fully. I could see the dirt floors of the tunnel, packed and swept, clean, as clean as floors of dirt could be, but bare. There were no sleeping bags, no blankets, no signs of food, no sign of life. How were they living here? Why, I said. Why did you run away? Where are your parents? Don't know anymore, Tom said. Do you have enough to eat? How long have you been down here? It's fine, Ez, Tom said. We're fine. Is it safe? Is someone looking for you? Yes, Clara said. She was right up next to me. She smelled of talcum powder and dirt, and there were circles under her eyes, wide and purple as the circles under the eyes in the man in the driveway had been. Someone is looking, and he finds us just about every night. Stop it, Clara, Tom said. You're scaring her. I hugged my arms to my chest. I was freezing. Are you all right? Just cold, I said. No, you're not, Clara said. Excuse me? Clara, Tom said. But she answered, we're not helping her. She turned to me. You're not cold, you're not hungry, you're not thirsty, you're just tired. She stood right in my face. Stop pretending to be all those other things. You can't be those things anymore. Just tired. All you'll ever be is tired, and you'll never get enough sleep. Never. I shook my head. The air felt thin, the brick ceiling too close. I needed to get away from Clara, out of the tunnel. I don't know what you mean, I said. I backed up until my shoulder hit a wall. The cold, damp brick was like a shock against my skin. I gasped. Oh, for heaven's sakes, Clara said. It's all right, Tom said. Forgive us, we've never done this before. Done what? I said. Told someone. Told someone what? Why were they hungry? Why weren't they hungry? Why were they running? Why were they tired all the time? We're dead, Tom said, and so are you.
I'm from Troy, Ohio, and I feel like I've lived in Athens all my life because I have 2 daughters who went to Ohio U, 2 son-in-laws who went to Ohio U, and my wife, Linda, went to Ohio U also. And they're watching. Even though I'm from Troy, okay, I still wrote a book. So I need to set up the passage. The book I wrote is called Vietnam on My Mind. I was in South Vietnam as a Navy advisor in the years 1972 and 1973, right at the end of the Vietnam War when everything was going sideways. And I was an advisor to the Vietnamese Navy men themselves. And so I'm going to read from a story of a book called, the story is called High Seas Adventure. And the setting of the story is, I'll kind of set up where I am when this passage starts. I was trying to get to this island out in the middle of the Bay of Siam, me and my counterpart. And I was trying to get over there on a military aircraft. But as I got to Can Tho in the south part of the South Vietnam, they canceled the aircraft. So I was sitting there, dejected, sitting on the flight line, trying to figure out a way to get to An Thoi, which is the island over there, to help the Vietnamese do some fortifications on their base. And so that's where I am, sitting out there dejected. And here it goes. The sultry morning was beginning to look really uncomfortable, but my spirits brightened a little as I glanced down the flight line and saw a man in green fatigues and a red beard coming toward me. "Well, looky here," he said. "What in the world are you doing here, Lieutenant?" Sure enough, it was Lyle Fayette, all the way from Jackson, Mississippi. Lyle and I had done our advisor training together at Mare Island back in California and had become good friends. I explained my need to get to An Thoi to Lyle. Lyle was a wiry, savvy, good-natured old sea dog, a petty officer, 3rd class, and Navy veteran of 20-plus years. He'd been around the Horn for sure and thrived on an old school life of whiskey, hard living, and making a profession out of avoiding work. Lyle could be a hothead if provoked, though, and didn't have much patience for authority, hence his 3rd-class rank after 20 years in the Navy. He'd survived ice storms in the North Atlantic and fought his way out of the bars in the flesh pots of Asia and kept coming back for more. He was coasting through his year in Vietnam. Lyle had the most rubbery face of any man I've ever known. A man of 1,000 expressions. His skin didn't like the sun, so it was always red in Vietnam. But it went well with that thick, rusty beard. Overall, the pliable face lent just a hint of Popeye to his countenance. Lyle had no fear of anything that I know of. He enjoyed and knew a lot of jokes and loved to laugh. But that face was really something. He could look as sorrowful as Mother Teresa or as crazy as Jack Nicholson within the measure of a second. He mostly wore his "like I really care" face. You could read Lyle's mind real time by just watching his facial expressions. I was a young man then and considered Lyle as somewhat elderly at maybe 40 or maybe 45. It was good to see Lyle, but even better when I found out he was a swift boat advisor at An Thoi, and he was trying to get down to the same place I was. Always a scrounger, though. He'd found a way, although it didn't sound all that solid to me. "You wouldn't be up for a little adventure now, would you, Lieutenant?" he baited. He sat down with a glass of tea, took a long slug, and explained what he'd come up with. Lyle had run into 2 young Vietnamese sailors he knew from An Thoi at a rather unsavory downtown establishment in Can Tho, the city in the Mekong Delta. They were also on their way back to the base and planned to take a commercial bus overland to the coastal city of Rak Ya. From there, they would take what they referred to as a lumber boat across the Gulf of Thailand to An Thoi. Lyle explained, "Not sure what they mean by lumber boat, but I'm guessing it's a freighter packing building supplies into the island. And they've done it before. I reckon it's okay after all. Them boys are native, they know the lay of the land. I personally don't know squat about this bus business, but I trust them more than flying back and forth across the Delta. We must have been bored or maybe just plain stupid and decided to join them." That's it.
I'm going to read you a very short story from my book, Little Bits of Out There. My writing tends to be a little quirky, so I was stationed in Iraq for 2 years, and crazy as it sounds, I had a good time. Our unit was close as a pack of wolves. Moving together in the dark without stumbling, we circled houses and sand dunes, and when necessary, we killed. Mostly the people we killed had guns, but not always. Unfortunately for us, other wolves were waiting out there, circling and killing. Their pack was bigger than our pack, and they knew more about the desert. They were native wolves, and we were strangers. We didn't have a chance. I quit the Army, or the Army quit me. They sent me home after the incident. I enjoyed soldiering more than most, and I kind of miss it now. Being back home is not all I expected. Changes are happening. Changes in the world, changes in me. I stopped shaving last month. I always hated it, and the Army made us shave every day, even in the desert where water was scarce. That's not why I quit shaving. I quit because it seems silly to be getting rid of hair when I'm going to be a wolf. My wife Janice thinks I'm crazy, but she doesn't understand me. It's like we speak a different language. I have been dreaming I was a wolf since I was 10 years old. My mother had trouble getting babysitters because after they put me to bed, they came back to find me asleep with my eyes open and my lips drawn back from my sharp pointed teeth. If they touched the bed, I growled. My mother said I was a difficult child to raise, but she loved me anyway. She didn't hug me or kiss me, but she did pat me on the head. Anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do now. Janice hasn't slept in the same bed with me since I came back. My growling keeps her awake. We went to a marriage counselor, but that didn't last long, mainly because of the counselor. He was a funny-looking guy who didn't seem like a therapist at all. He never looked at me, and his eyes darted left and right as though he was afraid of something. He had yellow eyes and a short beard. After hearing my story about becoming a wolf, he confided he believed he was a goat. People in the States are crazier than I remembered. So what happens when I finally become a wolf? I won't be able to get down on 4 legs and run around. I'm not built for it, but I could walk through the woods at night and howl at the moon and never go to work again. Did I mention I had a job as a town dog catcher and how I rounded up all the dogs, told them to be good, and then let them go? I was even given a promotion because of all the dogs I caught, again and again. I see some of those dogs now and then, but they never speak to me. Janice and I discussed my decision to quit my job. She wasn't much for it. Maybe you could get a job as a park ranger. Don't wolves have good night vision? I gathered from this that Janice has begun to believe in my wolf change, or she simply wants to keep me working. No, I said, wolves don't have jobs. I will sleep during the day, walk through the streets at nights, and try to find a pack to roam with. Janice moved out. She said she could handle most of my changes, but not my bathroom habits. She handed me the key to the house and said she would see me around sometime. She was nice about it, though. Before she moved out, she bought me a case of dog food and some dog treats. After she left, I began looking for a pack. At night, I ranged through the streets searching dark alleys and parks and deserted buildings. I discovered all manner of groups roaming the streets at night, but none seemed to feel kindly toward wolves. The only howling I did was when I was assaulted by a bunch of teenagers who beat me up and stole my wallet, my watch, and my clothes. I didn't need those things, but I wish they had left me my shoes. One night, after several weeks of roaming, I thought maybe I'd finally met a female wolf, lurking in a doorway. She smiled, and her smile showed me she had very sharp white teeth. When I approached her, she did not seem afraid. When I asked her if she were a wolf, she replied, "I'm anything you want me to be, honey." That didn't turn out well. I slept during the day because it's kind of hot in my house after they turned off the electricity. Janice came by once to get some things. She had moved in with the old goat of a marriage counselor. She wondered what I was eating, since without electricity you can't keep anything in the refrigerator. I decided for obvious reasons not to tell her. I ended up sleeping in the streets and alleys after the bank took the house away. I tried sleeping at the shelter, but there's some guy there who thinks he's a tiger, and he really scares me. Being a wolf isn't all bad. My feet have toughened up, so I don't need those shoes that were stolen from me. My mother brings me a doggy bag once a week and leaves it by my box in the alley. And sometimes she pats me on the head.
My book is a nonfiction, more photographs with little blurbs on the history of the town. But I'll read you a little bit of the introduction of the 90s to early 1900s. Warren G. Harding, Theodore Roosevelt, and William Howard Taft were all visitors of the Dew House. Stewart's Opera House, on the opposite end of the public square from the Dew House, brought entertainment to the town. The Opera House was built in 1879 by George Stewart, who had previously. Many businesses have come and gone on the public square, but many of the buildings look very much the same as they did in the heyday. Read from, because it's not a novel, but it does have many of the old photographs from around town. There's chapters on, that is all in this Images of Nelsonville. Thank you.
Thank you. This is something that happened on 6/24/12. I wandered into the empty church. The door had been unlocked, unlatched even. While the night air was cool, the air inside was stale and warm, and dark. The intense silence frightened me. I didn't feel safe, but imagined a crowd of silent worshippers, subdued by the words of their priest, grasping for salvation. I crawled onto an empty pew. Is this God, I wondered, here inside this edifice of shame and control? I hope it burns to the ground, I thought. I could see the stained glass shattering inward with the force of life. But I know that even in this silence, in this building, there is God. It is the presence that watches me, that appears as butterflies or drifts down upon the wind, and answers my questions with cookie fortunes from the sidewalk. God is what I bring with me, and I talk, ask for guidance and give thanks, then lay on the pew and feel perfectly at ease. The presence fills the walls, just to the high ceiling. It is good, I think. Now the room is comforting. I walk up the aisle and see paint chips on the carpet. The walls are crumbling. This place has been abandoned. By compulsion, some force guiding my hand, there's a broom in the corner. I sweep them up. Love comes in many shapes and sizes, as many as the shades of blue in the sky or raindrops in a thunderstorm. It takes the shape of a mother's worried face or a father's warm embrace, a joke between friends or a smile between strangers, a teacher's patient scorn at mischievous laughter, the ache of forgiveness whether it comes soon or a long time after, the proud longing of letting go, the kindness of not letting it show, lending a hand, giving what you can, or the wisdom to refrain from acting on behalf of another, knowing that some things can only be learned by living through. As many of the blades of grass in a rolling field or songs of bird at the morning's dawn, as many ways so are to kiss or a hug or miss someone. Love comes in many forms, and all of them are beautiful. And one of the stories, little Malik ducked behind the concoctioner's podium, squirming and doing her best to stifle a giggle. All right, I know she's in here somewhere, mused a tall, bearded concoctioner in his blue and silver robes. Malik gave herself away with a rustling of a curtain. Aha! Shouted the concoctioner as he yanked the curtain aside. Malik shrieked and burst into laughter. The concoctioner's white beard fuzzled with a smile, but then he put on a serious face. All right, the guests will arrive soon. We must get to work. Malik gave a hefty sigh, but followed the old man as he shuffled to the back room. Being a concoctioner's assistant was hard work. On the other side of a large mahogany-stained door, Malik took in the wall-to-ceiling shelves filled with potions, extracts, and keepsakes of all kinds. A few were kept in large jars, many in medium bottles, and a great number in wooden boxes, and some in tiny little drawers, each with its proper label. The concoctioner went straight to his workbench and picked up a very small scroll. He squinted his eyes and pushed his nose toward the parchment. Malik, have you seen my vocals? The little girl tucked her chin in and pointed at the man's chest. Oh, he said, fidgeting with his hands and lifting up his belly button-length beard. The spectacles had been hidden underneath. With his vision restored, the concoctioner read from his list. First, Winnie the Standard, red and white rose petals, morning dew, earth from a family's hearth, and let's see, they requested the feather of a mourning dove, water from a summer's rain, essence of marigold. The concoctioner continued to read off ingredients as Malik jumped to the task of fetching each item from its place on the expansive shelves, her curls bouncing about. Finally, the list was finished, and the concoctioner turned to the velvet drawstring pouch that had accompanied the scroll. He examined each item, smiling and raising his eyebrows in turn. These special keepsakes would also be added to the mix. What do the colors mean again? Malik asked as she took a stool and propped her elbows on the table. Concoctioner looked at her from under his brow, but that was all the reprimand he gave. Red is the color of a passionate affair. Blue is the color of a soothing fondness. He deftly mixed ingredients while he spoke. Orange is the color of a love of a solid and withstanding partnership. Green is a love that will continually grow. The concoctioner went on and on about the standard outcomes and their meanings. Does everyone get the same colors? Do people ever get funny colors like black? Malik interrupted. Now the concoctioner sighed and removed his glasses. Sometimes people get very nasty outcomes. A black file means that this lover risks his or her own oblivion. Now the concoctioner leaned back on his chair. Any of the colors, should they come out murky rather than clear, signify that the love is not quite all that it appears to be. And sometimes the mixing results in a nasty, foul-smelling gunk. It may be any color, but when the mix is very bad, the odor and consistency, yuck! He shivered and stuck his tongue out in disgust. Malik laughed at his antics, but questioned further. What happens when it turns out like that? The concoctioner shrugged and shook his head. Depending on the color, one or both of the lovers may walk away, forget about the whole thing. All too often, though, they drink it anyway. The girl's jaw dropped. Even when it's like all gunky and gross? The concoctioner nodded. But why? I suppose that for some people, even a poisonous love is better than no love at all. The little girl's heartache showed in her pout. This made the concoctioner laugh. They don't know the secret, though, he coaxed. What secret? The old man's eyes twinkled. That love is everywhere, in all things. A body never need be without love if they can be close to the Mother Earth, if they keep their friends near, and if they learn to love themselves. That's no secret, Malik argued. Not to you. That's why you're made to be a concoctioner. Now he went about the task of mixing. Does it ever just stay clear? She questioned. Indeed it does, every once in a while. This is a special occurrence, celebrating a love that is pure. Wow. The concoctioner laughed as he often did during their conversations. Malik, you've never seen the ceremony performed. But today might be a good one to start. I have a very good feeling about this couple. The girl's eyes widened and she nodded vigorously, curls bobbing every which way. Well then, let's get to work. As the guests arrived and their ceremony began, Malik sat in a chair off to the side of the stage where she had a prime view. With a grand tune playing, the couple ceremoniously walked to the center of the stage, each carrying a vial of liquid. Standing on either side of the podium, the couple made their promises to one another and poured their vials into the eternal bowl. The concoctioner sprinkled a powder of his best wishes onto the bowl and stirred with his wand. The couple looked into each other's eyes as they waited for the potion's change to take place. When it did, gasps and murmurs filled the auditorium. Malik scooted forward in her chair and craned her neck. The vials and the bowl were empty. Satisfied, the couple placed their vials on the podium and walked away hand in hand, greeted by cheers from their family and friends. Later, Malik would ask the concoctioner what had happened to their potion, and he would answer, You see, my dear, they did not need a potion to tell them of their love for one another, because each of them knew it within their heart. Theirs, Malik, was the taste of truth.
I'm going to be reading two shorter selections from my book, Walking Through Fire, that is Iraqi Struggle for Justice and Reconciliation, and it's based on my work with a peace team in Iraq over the last 13 years. And I decided to type it out so it's easier to read. It's from this book.
I should have done that.
Right. All right. It was 4 months after the November 2004 massive attacks on Fallujah, Iraq. Members of our peace team and members of an Iraqi peace team arrived on the edge of the city. An Iraqi human rights worker with us had brought donated medical supplies for the hospital that had been severely damaged and was barely operating. As we entered the city, the damage was shocking. 60% of the houses in Fallujah were destroyed. People were cleaning up rubble and patching holes in walls. To get to the hospital, we had to go by foot along rubble-cluttered streets and over a bridge across the Euphrates River. In the southern area of the city, it looked like an earthquake had struck, with tents scattered among the rubble. We knew that if word got around that there were Americans in the city, our lives could be in danger. And so we were surprised when a woman came to us and invited us into her family's tent for tea.
While we sat on the floor of the tent, the father told us their story. His eyes and voice revealed deep pain. Our family left the city after American forces warned of impending attacks. We went with others to stay in a school in a nearby village. 3 families shared a room. Then a month ago, authorities forced our family and others to return. But this is what we found. See that pile of rubble next to the tent? That was our home. In the hour of sharing together, we felt drawn close to the family. But then it was time to leave. Thank you, the women said to us as they fervently hugged and kissed the women in our group. We all had tears in our eyes. Walking away, I felt humbled to receive so much love from this family. Here we were, Iraqis and American, Shia and Sunni Muslim, and Christian. We had done nothing to change their situation, but simply listened and cared, and said that we were sorry for the damage and suffering the attacks caused. Some of us were from the country that had destroyed their city and home, so they had every reason to see us as their enemies. Instead, the power of love broke down the barriers between us. We left in awe, but also sober about the tragedy of the situation and the daunting task the people of Fallujah had of rebuilding their lives. In my second reading, a Karbala wedding. A highlight of our time in the city of Karbala was being invited to a wedding. The women were in one room and the men in another. The bride sat on a large chair in front wearing a fancy gown. Looking around at the women, I noticed that their eyes were welcoming, ready to risk. In Baghdad, so many eyes were heavy and tense with worry or averted in fear. Here, the women's eyes conveyed the many feelings dancing around the room. The bride's eyes were nervous as she played this beauty queen role. Eyes of children flashed with excitement and curiosity, taking in the mysteries of this event. The eyes of teens were full of dreams about their own futures. In middle-aged eyes, there was more realism about the stresses and responsibilities of marriage, but also a desire to relive the excitement of these traditions and pass them on to the next generation. Many pulled off their scarves, revealing stylish hairdos. One passed along a playful wink to me as she began trilling and let herself go to the beat of the clapping and dancing. Near me was a row of older women, fully covered in conservative black. They were no longer active players, but were beloved and part of the stability of the clan. Some of their eyes were weary and worn, some surrounded by countless wrinkles. One of these pairs of eyes looked at me intently, and our eyes locked. It was long enough for her eyes to reveal her worry, but also acceptance and strength. She tried to tell me something, but her voice got lost in another wave of trilling. It didn't matter what she said. Something happened as I looked in her eyes. She revealed herself to me. I felt accepted for who I was, another woman who shared the same struggles in life. All the eyes I saw today started the melting of the protective wall I had recently let grow around my heart in being in that violent society. But her eyes broke through. I let the tears well up in my eyes and allowed the love I had for the Iraqi people to flow freely. Thank you.
section I have chosen for you today is long and dull. It's on page 188. There are three characters: the unnamed father, the unnamed son, and the unnamed detective poet. The poet speaks first. Long and Dull by Bartles Bear. Long and dull sounds more like a description of a shovel than the name of a law firm. You trying to make some sort of statement or just an observation? Just an observation, I guess. What's he talking about? Shovels. Never mind, son. No, I want to know what everybody else knows. That's all. You know what he means. I want to know what he means. Look, kid, if he understood half of what I have to say, he wouldn't have to be in this line of work. Dad, what's he talking about? Tell me what he's talking about. Oh, he's just talking out of his head, that's all. You'll learn. He's an idiot. Doesn't make sense half the time. But the shovel, Dad. I guess he was saying that he's not too sharp, you know, dull. That's not what he's saying, Dad. Dull is a word you'd use to describe a knife, not a shovel. What do you mean, mister? It was a joke. I never explain a joke, so forget it, kid. See, I told you. Okay, I guess. Leave him be, son. Leave him be. I can't. I've got to know about the shovel. You're digging yourself in deeper with that one, son. Leave it. What do you say, mister? I speak the truth in spite of my youth and never capture much attention. I experience mirth for what it's worth, but no one's pleased with my invention. Poetry now. Kid, I told you, leave him alone. Now get out of here. Leave him alone. The son shrugs, leaves, and slams the door. You enjoy making life difficult, or does it just come natural? Life's difficult. I try to make it interesting. You know what I meant. Yeah, I always know what you meant. Too bad you can't say the same for me. Okay, so what have you found out? And give it to me plain. I can't take any more conundrums. Things are already getting pretty... None of that. The language has taken enough insults from you already. No need to add to it. Here's what I've got. The detective had a real report, of course, but I'll leave that out. Sir? Mister? What? It could just as easily have been underwear or a screwdriver. What? Your joke, sir. Long and dull. Oh, that. How long did it take you, or did somebody tell you? No, sir. It hit me just as the door closed behind me. You're pretty quick. Now you're being sarcastic. I just never expected it to be a joke. It isn't right, and it isn't fair. Oh, that's a racist riddle, and sexist to my taste. Oh, gross, sir. Where did that come from? Did you decide that on the spur of the moment? No, I heard that riddle in a movie one time, long time ago. You remember everything you've ever heard in a movie? No. Only the stuff that appeals to my peculiar sense of humor. Peculiar doesn't cover it. Do you always obscure your ideas under a veneer of humor? Sure. It gives me my edge, my advantage. It puts my listener on his guard, makes him aware that you're a pretty smart cookie. Smarter than the average bear, that's what my high school English teacher told me. I told her that even if I was smarter than the average bear, I was still a bear. Might be a good pseudonym, Grizzly Bear.
I always wanted to be a writer, but then I found out I had nothing to say. Until after working with sex offenders for 13 years in a sex offender treatment program. And many of them were incest offenders, and I'm an incest survivor. So I had a journal kept over the years, and so half the book is my journal, and half is written really to incest offenders trying to let them in on the secret that incest is harmful. Shattered boundaries, and it's a fantasy. It'll become obvious in a minute. Okay, she has gone on an astral project, and she's gotten involved, and she didn't get back to her body in time. And she catches a ride on a motorcycle because her energy is really going. The driver goes one way, Amber goes the other, hobbling, since to her horror she notices that the cord has run out. When Amber reaches the house, no one is home. She eases into her room and she is not there. Here, either. My body is gone. Amber jumps when the phone rings. She cannot answer it. But Rob's voice on the answering machine does. It's a woman inquiring about the time of the funeral. Funeral? Who died? The church Rob and Amber attended when they did is a couple of blocks away. As Amber approaches, she sees a great many cars parked, including what appears to be a white hearse at the front door. Strains of rocks of ages are rising from the church. A horrible suspicion is becoming a certainty. The faces of those gathered in the church are familiar because they're mourning her. She goes down the aisle to the front of the church, hesitantly and unseen, and approaches the casket, which is still open. It is with utter dread that she forces herself to look down at the young, still, waxen body lying there. The hymns swirl around her head as she turns and comes face to face with Rob, who is sitting in the front row between Aunt Betty and Jim. Of course, he cannot see her. She fights off a sob which she feels may never end and turns to approach the casket once more, dumbly attempting to rouse her body by giving it a shake. Her hands just pass through the lifeless body. It won't move, of course. Her carelessness has killed her. Amber starts shaking uncontrollably as she surveys her poor body lying there, abandoned. Someone has chosen a blouse that matched her hazel eyes, although of course she can't see the color of her eyes now. Amber thinks she remembers reading that the eye sockets of the dead are stuffed with cotton. She can no longer connect with her body because not only is she dead, but there is no blood, only formaldehyde. She leans over the casket and attempts to kiss her forehead. I am so sorry. Her lips are unable to make contact with the still form. Gradually, Amber becomes aware of the funeral service as people are remembering her. Jim is standing before the congregation with his guitar singing, "Softly and tenderly, Jesus is calling." Rob begins singing along with the Jim from his seat, and soon everyone is singing, still seated. As the sound of the guitar fades away, Jim speaks. Amber wasn't much of a churchgoer, and I was privileged to know her only a short time. But I do remember her cheerfully singing some of the old hymns while working around the house. The song we just sang was one of her favorites. Jim returns to his seat and Amber looks around, wondering who's remembering she has missed. Miss Cat Pat from high school is there, even Dr. Parati and his wife and members of the therapy group. Oh God, what have I done? Rob is standing now and starting to speak, his voice tremulous. How can I say goodbye to Amber? She'll always be a part of me, as she is a part of me now. We are one. She lives in my heart. There are not many dry eyes in the church, and as the organ swells for what must be the final hymn,
Amber hurries down the aisle ahead of everyone else.